Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ag Data Commons monthly webinar series. My name is Erin Antonoli, Ag Data Commons curator.
Going all right. What's up?
Hello.
Would you mind when
Whoever is speaking, can you please mute your line?
I think you slides about what is going on in there.
Excuse me, everyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So that I can chime in a little bit.
All is not working.
So that telling him that is.
Excuse me.
What?
Excuse me. Please mute your lines.
Yeah, I'll have my main thrust will be focused on that.
Yeah, so that I can chime in on that.
All right. We're just going to continue and hope that whoever's out there talking notices that they are not muted. Today's webinar, Data Literature Linking in the Ag Data Commons, will begin momentarily, but first I want to go through a few minor housekeeping items. Your audio should have been muted upon entering the webinar. Please leave audio muted to avoid feedback. Feel free to submit questions at any point throughout the webinar using the chat box, which should be either on the top or the right-hand side of your WebEx window. And we'll open up for questions at the end of the presentation.
Have you talked to George recently?
Following the presentation, providing there are no glitches or other technical issues, the webinar recording will be available.
Yeah, he's interested in talking with,
which can be found in
he's asking about what the national program is, and it's like, well, soil biology, and he's got this interest in, like, endophytes.
Curator for the Ag Data Commons, and who manages the bulk of our literature citations and connections.
It's something, what he's talking about is something interesting.
Thank you, Aaron. And so our topic today is the linkage between scientific research data and the scholarly literature, chiefly but not exclusively peer-reviewed articles, and how these links are handled in Ag Data Commons. We will look at some problems with data citation or lack thereof, and review recent recommendations for best practices aimed towards openness and reproducibility. Then we will go through some different types of links that we capture in Ag Data Commons and show our citation metrics and bibliography. And lastly, we'll take a quick overview of some current data reference products and initiatives. And then we'll have time for questions, answers, and discussion.
That would be something you want to do that.
First of all, what do we mean by data with respect to the Ag Data?
So one other thing I was saying.
Please mute back there.
Excuse me, somebody with the initials FF is not muted. Could you please mute yourself because you're interrupting the webinar?
And we are having some trouble. We cannot mute everyone, so you have to do it yourself.
And the way I was
all right, we may have to
you want to do a picture
disconnect everybody and have you all call back? No. Okay, I apologize for the difficulties. Please, if you're on the line, please mute yourself.
There is nowhere on the
so, Ag Data Commons, we handle the raw data, processed data, data dictionaries or documentation, database files or links to databases, APIs and software tools, and multimedia collections. All those would be handled as data resources. Items that we link to in the metadata would be the published articles, related articles, or presentations associated with the data study, news articles or press releases, and cited data. And we'll see some examples of those later in the presentation.
That is okay with you,
that's okay.
We do not currently archive software programs or source code. These must be linked to in a GitHub repository or a project website.
The manuscript?
No. The big picture.
So what are the purpose or benefits of data sharing and citation? Formal data citation has many benefits for the scientific and scholarly community. For example, to allow others to find and download data for further analysis and for use in other studies, to enable the application of data in new ways or in different scenarios, to comply with publisher and funder requirements of Federal Open Data Directive.
Yeah.
To allow data creators to receive recognition for their contributions.
Okay.
And institutions to track the impact of their investment.
Okay.
Data references in the past would often consist of a brief mention in the text, a footnote in a figure caption, or in an acknowledgement, or even worse, not being cited at all. Or it has sometimes been accepted practice to simply say that data will be made available upon request. And this situation has contributed to the so-called reproducibility crisis, which has been widely reported in journals, blogs, and even the mainstream media. The SENDI Data Curation Group, which is a federal information community from 13 different government agencies, is developing an annotated bibliography on this issue that will be released shortly. And Aaron and I both contributed to that bibliography and made some annotations and so on. But all this is changing as stakeholders are demanding better, more open practices in data sharing and citation. And here, this is a constellation of some of the key players and solutions providing formalized standards and guidelines around open data citation. These are organizations and coalitions, publishers, funding agencies, all making recommendations and guidelines. And links to all of these are included in the references list at the end of the presentation for you to study in detail later on if you feel so inclined. That's not forwarding. There we go. But I've done that for you. So to summarize all of those recommendations, the key criteria for open data access and citation basically come down to data should be made available in an open repository by the time of publication of the citing article, either before or for certain by the time of publication. Standardized metadata, including unique identifiers, should be assigned, such as the digital object identifier, thesaurus controlled vocabulary terms. We use the National Agricultural Library thesaurus. And administrative metadata, including funding, license information, and so on. Then include a formal citation in the references section of the article. Most journals will allow that. And ideally a data statement, a data availability statement in either the acknowledgements or the data section, which clarifies how users can access the data, for example, via supplements to the article or in a repository or project website, and also to state any restrictions on access. And lastly, privacy concerns may exist, such as in cases of health data with information about human subjects or data referencing sensitive sites of scientific interests, habitats for endangered species, and so on, or any commercially sensitive data. So here are some examples of data citations. At a minimum, you want to provide a standard citation similar to a book citation with authors or creators, year or date of release, the title of the data set, the publisher or responsible organization, and a DOI or other unique identifier. Additionally, a URL or date cited may be added where that is important, for example, for dynamic data that changes over time. And more specific criteria may also be required for subsets or versions. So here are some examples from some different organizations or coalitions. And Act Data Commons adopts the APA citation style and provides a recommended citation with each data set. So this is an example here that you see at the top. We also plan to provide additional download citation formats for importing into reference managers such as EndNote, BibTeX, and Zotero, which we'll see in a few minutes. Until recently, data papers were simply published as a special type of article in a regular journal. Nowadays, there's a growing number of data journals in which the data set itself is the focus of the article rather than its application, for example, in data collection, structure, processing, workflow analysis, or visualization. Data may be stored with the journal as a supplement or pointed to in an open repository. And data papers often accompany a related regular journal article in which the journal is applied or used in a study or cited. These four titles, Biodiversity Data Journal, Data in Brief, Scientific Data, and Earth System Science Data, are frequently cited nowadays in Ag Data Commons. And there's a more extensive list of the Foster Open Science link there, that's included in the references. So firstly, what are the data literature links in Ag Data Commons? I mentioned the primary article or data paper here, in which the data is the main topic described in the article. Often accompanies a related article where the data are applied in a research context. And there's an example here of the related article where the data are applied. Method citation. It's also important to cite important methods, tools, or procedures for data assembly in greater detail. This is often required in open data policies and data management plans. And lastly, we also provide a preferred dataset citation if this is other than the Ag Data Commons citation. If, for example, if it exists and it has a citation in another repository. And we also provide a link to the PubAg ID for articles in this database. I don't have one in the slide view, but okay. Sorry. Go back. Yes, PubAg. So PubAg has a unique identifier called the handle, which we'll include in the citation. And it also provides a link to data sets in the Ag Data Commons and other repositories. We're also planning or thinking about an NAL meta-thesaurus search that would query both PubAg and Ag Data Commons simultaneously. So PubAg is the NAL's agricultural literature search and retrieval system, and there's some interesting numbers there. It's close to 2 million citations with about 85,000 full-text articles and links to cited data sets. We also have dataset to dataset links in Ag Data Commons. First type being is part of, where the dataset is part of a larger parent dataset on the Ag Data Commons, or cites other datasets, which are for citations that we use to construct, for datasets that we use to construct this one, or that are aggregations or adaptations of other data. And then we have related content links, which would be to a resource that provides additional context to the data set, for example, a project website or data documentation, in this case, an NCBI bioproject data description. We're compiling a growing bibliography of articles and other publications that cite data sets in Ag Data Commons. To do this, we have set up email alerts in services such as Scopus and Google Scholar, as well as running searches in various collections. Our goal is to automate this process to the extent possible, although some level of manual searching will probably always be necessary. We're using the Zotero Reference Manager system to import and publish these citations, and we have several collections or libraries. Publications citing Ag Data Commons, self-citations or data papers, and citations to Dr. Duke's phytochemical and ethnobotanical databases at NAL. And we collect statistics on these citations and other criteria in the metrics dashboard. So this is a screenshot of the Zotero interface, is both the desktop version and the web interface. So importing a citation is pretty straightforward with the article open in a web browser, Firefox preferably as a plugin. Importing the metadata is done with a single click, and then relevant tags and dataset links can be added to the record. And in our new Ag Data Commons platform, DCAN Science, these citations will also be added to their specific dataset record. We're collecting a variety of site metrics in our dashboard with interactive charts providing monthly statistics such as registered users, number of catalog datasets, download and search activity, and a breakdown of datasets by each of the USDA agencies. And here you can see charts for incoming and outgoing article citations. We'll get to the metrics from the Ag Data Commons About tab at the top. So in blue on the left here, you see the regular external citations to Ag Data Commons, and the pan are the self-citations. And then on the right, data sets with primary citations in blue, the methods articles in navy, looks like, the associated articles in tan, and dataset to dataset links in white tan. Lastly, we're going to look at some of the current data literature reference services. One that particularly looks interesting is the Scholix initiative, which is a framework for exchanging metadata about data and literature links. Together by data centers and aggregators to build this framework with the sort of many of the same organizations that are promoting open data standards, as well as many publishers. There are some of the same players here. There's a schema to define the link metadata and a literature linking service or search engine. Ag Data Commons plans to integrate with the report of the Scholix API, so we would deposit our data literature metadata probably as JSON, but it could be XML format. And then query the Scholix API each day and retrieve any new citation activity and create new records, new citation records from the returned metadata. Another well-established reference service for data literature linking is the Data Citation Index, which is an important resource for the academic literature in Web of Science. And they are working with over 300 repositories worldwide in many disciplines. And it allows the usage, allows tracking the usage of the data through citation counts. So we plan to look into that as another source of citation information. Another very interesting project to watch is the Make Data Count initiative funded by the Sloan Foundation with participation from the California Digital Library, Data One, Datasite, and Project Counter. As you may know, Counter currently provides the tools to enable publishers and vendors to report usage of their online resources in a consistent way, and thus allows libraries to assess user activity. And the aim of the Make Data Count is to develop and deploy the social and technical infrastructure necessary to elevate data to a first-class research object alongside traditional products such as publications. And you can visit their website for more information and presentations. So to sum up, open data access and citation are increasingly required in all areas of research. There is increasing acceptance of research data as citable contributions to the scholarly record. The trend is towards depositing data in open repositories in conjunction with the publication of an article rather than as supplementary content, which the article may well be paywalled at that time, so the data wouldn't then be open. Consistent metadata, use of ORCIDs or author identifiers, keywords, and controlled vocabularies is very important for discovery and interoperability. And lastly, persistent unique identifiers are the basic mechanism for data literature links. And we have a rather lengthy list of references which will be in the slides and the recorded version, but then also we have a Word document that we can make available on request if you contact the curator email or inbox on Ag Data Commons. So with that, I think we would like to invite any questions or comments and suggestions, any information or resources that you find particularly helpful.
And you can either type your questions into the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we will try to unmute you. We're having some issues with our mute right now and unmute, so that may or may not happen, but the chat box I can definitely see. So please let us know if you have any questions, and John is really the expert here, but the rest of us are here and we may be able to help answer questions as well. And sorry about the audio issues. Thank you for sticking it out with us here. No questions? Is there anything that Cindy Parr, project manager for Ag Data Commons, is here as well? Is there anything you want to say about any looking forward to any initiatives that we have?
I think the only thing I would add to all this is, as John says, this is a fast-moving landscape, and I know that journals are increasingly trying to standardize how data and articles are linked together, and that's only going to get more important in the future. One thing that I'd like to stress about Ag Data Commons is that while a lot of the details about data collection and how it's analyzed are in the articles, we are also encouraging folks to include that as part of the metadata for the data set so that it's in both places. And that way, no matter which way people are finding the data, whether it's through a link from an article or through a search that gets them directly to the data set, they'll have that additional context information. And in addition, the Ag Data Commons may have more detailed documentation that wouldn't be suitable for the article. But I think the key for all of this is that by linking the two together, the article and the data, you get the richest possible context that would enable the data to be understood and to be able to validate the results of the paper and to build on the work in the paper and the data.
All right. Last call for questions. Anybody? All right. We will, provided the recording went okay, we'll make that available. That will be on the Ag Data Commons. If you go to the About section, there's a webinar page, and we have all of the links to our past webinar recordings available there, and this one will join that page so that you can access it later. Like John said, if you have any questions or if you want that list in a Word doc of all those references that he presented at the end, that way you have the links as well that you can just click on. Feel free to email the email that you see on the screen down at the bottom, the nal-adc-curator@ars.usda.gov, and we will forward that document on to you. If your email can handle attachments that are large enough, we can also forward the presentation to you.
I could also make it, add it to a separate Zotero bibliography, if that's of interest.
There's a question about whether computer models are handled any differently than data sets, and in the Ag Data Commons, we would encourage a record for a computer model just like you would provide a record for a data set. The metadata would be pretty much exactly the same, and the only difference might be that instead of a link to a file or to a publisher website or some other data repository, there might be a link to a GitHub repository or wherever else the model is actually hosted. And we would also flag it with special keywords so that we would make sure that it's findable as a model. But other than that, it should link to all the same kinds of things that a data set would link to.
All right, and we've got another question. What is the primary source of the connections data? Are the relationships primarily from references and citations or submitted by the data producers?
The primary source would be from the alerts that we've set up in Scopus and Google Scholar to query for our specific DOI or the name Ag Data Commons. And then we get a notification as soon as there's an article that includes those strings.
That's for the citations, but if the person asking the question is asking about links to, for example, methods articles or primary articles, those are typically submitted along with the data set at the very initial stage of creating the data set record on our side.
Right.
Now, in the future, we would like to explore the idea of doing more artificially intelligent methods of locating appropriate related articles or methods citations or things like that. But right now, it's all manual, either by people submitting the information when the data set is submitted or by, as John says, looking at any alerts that tell us that there's a link between a particular data set and a particular article.
Did that answer the question? Yes, thank you. All right, great. Yeah, it's just another way to add value to your data set and make it more discoverable. And like Cindy was saying, it's a two-way street. It'll be discoverable through the data set on the Ag Data Commons going out, and then hopefully you'll have the links coming back in. All right, do we have any other questions? Any other last questions? All right, we'll stick around for a few more minutes just in case anyone thinks of anything that they want to ask us. But again, we're available if you think of questions later or want to get in touch with us for some other reason. Thanks for joining us, and we will be back next month with another webinar for you.